If you're just joining us, this is part 3 of the Zebb Quinn case. We encourage you to go back and listen to parts 1 and 2 before continuing on, so that you'll have a full picture of Zebb's story with all the strange turns this case has already taken. In the last episode, we retraced Zebb's final hours before he vanished into the January Asheville night. His car was later found abandoned in a parking lot with strange clues throughout the vehicle. Despite those bizarre clues, the trail went cold quick. For years, Owens insisted he had nothing to do with Zebb's disappearance, but investigators never fully bought his story. Then, nearly 15 years later, the case collided with another horrifying crime. In March of 2015, Robert Jason Owens, the last known person to see Zebb Quinn alive, was indicted for the brutal murders of Cristie Codd, her husband J.T. Codd, and their unborn daughter. And for the first time in years, police were looking hard at Owens and wondering what else he might be capable of. My name is Sarah Reed, and this is Sequestered Season 2, Case 5, The Disappearance and Murder of Zebb Quinn, Part 3.
Buncombe County detectives are searching for more human remains at the home of triple murder suspect Robert Jason Owens.
He's accused of killing celebrity chef Cristie Codd, her husband J.T., and their unborn child. Owens is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and is being held in the Buncombe County Jail under no bond.
News 13's Frank Crocker streaming live from the jail tonight. When did this latest search begin, Frank?
Earlier today, that's when the crime scene tape went back up and sheriff's detectives went back to work. Investigators have been at 8 Owens Cove Road before, looking for clues in this high-profile triple murder case.
It is definitely a step in the process of going through and making sure that we've been very methodical in going through what we believe to be the crime scene.
1.4 acres of heavily wooded property owned by suspect Robert Jason Owens. There were forensic evidence canines, also known as cadaver dogs, being worked back and forth, even up onto the porch of the mobile home where Owens lives. It is a tedious job.
And you line up and you go back and forth through that and search it grid by grid until you make sure that you've overturned pretty much every leaf on the property.
Evidence recovered weeks ago in a wood stove is what has detectives back out here again.
Of course, what we had sent off earlier has been confirmed as human remains. We can't confirm at this point in time whether or not it's the Codds, but of course, you know, with our actions, that's what we believe to be the case.
And to help cover all the ground, criminal justice students from Western Carolina University.
They help with crime scenes. They look at processing of evidence, everything from the beginning of a case to the end of a case.
And their outdoor classroom work included a walk down a roadside near Owens' home, and it might have paid off. They spotted something in a ditch, which was then marked and recovered by one of the detectives. It's a cell phone someone likely tossed there. Just another piece of what might wind up being evidence in a triple murder case.
It's very important for us to be able to do, and it also provides them with a real-world learning opportunity for the students.
One of the things that makes this real-world investigation so complex is its possible tie to the Zebb Quinn missing case from back in 2000. The sheriff confirming that Asheville police, working in concert with his detectives, certainly very interested in what might be uncovered out there during these searches. And we are told that detectives will be back on the scene in Leicester to continue the search first thing tomorrow morning. Reporting live in Asheville, Frank Crocker, News 13.
In April of 2015, a grand jury indicted Robert Jason Owens at 37 years old on a long list of charges. 2 counts of robbery with a dangerous weapon, 2 counts of destroying remains to conceal death, 2 counts of first-degree murder, and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. 7 counts in all. At his first court appearance, News 19 WLTX reported that Judge Julie Keppel told Owens that each charge carried a maximum penalty of either death or life in prison without parole. Speaking through a public defender, Owens asked for a court-appealed attorney. His probable cause hearing was scheduled for April 7th, 2015, and he was ordered held without bond at the Buncombe County Detention Facility. Cristie and J.T. Codd had first been reported missing by family members that Sunday. But according to arrest warrants, investigators believed that the couple had died several days earlier, on Thursday. Sheriff Van Duncan told reporters that Owens had been doing construction and odd jobs for the Codds through his small business. Investigators were still working to determine a motive, and at the time, Duncan wouldn't say how or where the couple had been killed. When deputies went to Codd's home, they found both of the family's vehicles parked outside, and their 2 dogs locked inside. It was Cecilia Owens, a friend of the Codds, and, oddly, Robert Jason Owens' aunt by marriage, who first went to check on the house. She told News 19 WTLX,
"As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. She had left the dogs, and she never would leave her dogs. Those were her babies."
And that line says it all. If you're a dog person, you know. Leaving them alone for days, that's just out of the question. And that just wasn't Cristie. The smell inside the house was awful. And for Cristie, who was meticulous and organized, that was unthinkable. When questioned, Jason Owens actually admitted he was involved, but he called it a terrible accident. He told investigators that Cristie and J.T. had gotten their truck stuck in a ditch, and somehow he'd run them over. Instead of calling for help, he said he panicked. Can you imagine hearing that? Accidentally running over both of them with a truck? The district attorney obviously wasn't buying it. Eventually, Owens admitted to much more. Eventually, he would confess to dismembering their bodies and burning them in his wood stove. He admitted to selling their belongings, then staging the break-in to throw off investigators. In April of 2017, Owens pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of dismembering human remains. The DA called it, quote, "a sentence of death in prison," end quote. Owens was handed nearly 75 years behind bars. Cristie and J.T.'s lives were just beginning, and their unborn daughter, Skylar, never even had the chance to take her first breath. All of it gone, at the hands of a neighbor, someone they thought they trusted. To the outside world, the case was closed. Owens was in prison, but for investigators in Asheville, his arrest was just the spark they'd been waiting for. Because if Robert Jason Owens could do something this heinous, what else was he capable of? And in the background, another case, now 15 years old, still unsolved, had never gone away. Zebb Quinn's disappearance. It all started with a tip. Not from a stranger, but from one of Owens' own relatives. They told police that back in the year 2000, right around the time Zebb Quinn vanished, Owens had dug a large pit on his property. Later, he poured concrete over it, claiming he was building a fish pond. But the pond was never finished, and the concrete was eventually covered back over with dirt. And with that information, on March 31st, 2015, just 11 days after a suspicious fire burned part of Owens' property, investigators came back with a search warrant, and this time with shovels. For the first time in years, the disappearance of 18-year-old Zebb Quinn was back in the headlines. The man who had been the last to see him alive was now a convicted killer. And when detectives returned to Owens' residence in March of 2015, they were ready to dig, not just into the ground, but into the truth. That week, ABC News 13 shared this story.
We were able to recover what we think are human remains. Part of those were recovered from a wood stove at that residence.
New information in the case of a contractor accused of killing a Lester couple and their unborn child.
And we're learning more about an overnight fire on the suspect's property and how the building that burned relates to the case.
Well, a lot of new details in a case that has drawn national attention. We have team coverage of today's developments.
News 13's John Lee is streaming live in Leicester. We're going to begin with him. John, what new details were revealed today about how they identified their suspect?
Well, those compelling facts in the search warrants handed out at this news conference today were told that hours after the family first contacted the sheriff's department wondering about the missing couple at that time, well, we're told that the suspect was behaving quite suspiciously. The search for Cristie and J.T. eventually led to their neighbor and contractor. At a news conference, Sheriff Van Duncan saying Sunday night, Robert Jason Owens was seen trashing their belongings in Candler.
They identified that someone had come out and in a very suspicious way had left things in a dumpster there at Donna Drive. We responded, and at that point in time, we were able to locate items which we knew belonged to Cristie Schoencobb. They did find Cristie Schoen's ID in that dumpster and several other items that came from the house.
Owens eventually charged with 3 murders. According to friends, Cristie, the former Food Network reality show contestant, was 5 months pregnant. Authorities released a stack of search warrants, including details from an interview with the suspect's wife.
She did, and what is contained in the search warrant, make the statement that he said that he had killed J.T. Cobb and had struck him with a vehicle.
The sheriff says still unidentified remains were found in Owens' wood stove.
He did admit to taking the bodies, storing on his property, and destroying them. He did admit to that during his interview.
And the remains sent away for forensic.
According to the search warrant, investigators seized fabric, leather materials, unknown hard fragments, a white powdery substance, metal, and chunks of concrete. On paper, those items sound like they could be linked to a human body, but police never released the test results. And if this was Zebb, they weren't saying. Investigators also uncovered numerous plastic bags filled with what they described as, quote, possibly pulverized lime or powdered mortar mix, end quote. That detail raised a chilling question. Was someone trying to break down human remains? Neighbors remembered the search vividly. Crews were on site for several days. Large tarps spread across the yard to conceal where digging was underway. Officers moved slowly and carefully, working one section at a time. Buckets of earth were carried away for testing. Heavy machinery rattled in the background while crime scene tape sealed off the entire property. In public, detectives were cautious. They refused to confirm what they were finding. But behind the scenes, they were working every angle, re-interviewing witnesses, following up on old tips, and circling back to alibis that had never quite added up. The dig didn't end with the kind of revelation many hoped for. No body was announced. No charges were filed in Zebb's case. But the timing, just days after the suspicious fire that burned part of Owens' property, left investigators convinced there was more to uncover. And though the headlines soon faded on the Codd murders, the renewed attention on Jason Owens kept the spotlight on Zebb's case. Because if nothing was found, what had Owens been trying so hard to hide in the first place?
And it was really Jason who said to us, you know, I'm here in jail and I trust you guys and I want to tell you what happened. I want to tell somebody what happened to Zebb Quinn. And his reason for doing that was not to get himself a deal, okay? He knew that he was in very serious trouble. He told us that he wanted Zebb's mother to know what happened.
I've had a lot of anger and hatred towards you guys.
I know you have.
And I'm trying to change about that. I want to help you guys. I do. I honestly, this has destroyed my life. I've got to get it off my chest and get the truth out there and get some resolve for his family.
Owens never gave a straightforward confession to killing Zebb Quinn. Instead, he offered shifting blame. He claimed he'd been ordered by another man to follow Zebb that night. A man who, according to Owens, later killed him. Here is Jason Owens, in his own words, from WLOS's The Good Kid.
Gene got out first, went to the back of his truck. I got out of my truck and walked around back.
To the back of your truck?
To the back of Gene's truck. And then Zebb got out of the car and walked beside the passenger side on Gene's truck.
So Zebb comes around toward you guys there?
Yes.
And then what?
Well, when I asked Gene where Misty was at, he said she'd be there in a few minutes. And I guess Zebb was thinking too that she was down that trail, and he turned looking down the trail. And at that time, Gene reached in the back of the pickup truck, brought out a .22 rifle and shot him in the back of the head.
By the time Owens made this claim in 2022, the man he accused, Walter Eugene Owens, his uncle Gene, was already dead. Prosecutors weighed the story, but with limited physical evidence, Owens's first-degree murder charge was reduced to accessory after the fact. It was a compromise Buncombe County District Attorney Todd Williams said was necessary to secure any legal acknowledgement that Zebb Quinn had been murdered. But this wasn't the first time Owens had pointed the finger at his uncle Gene. Not long after the Codd murders, years before his plea deal, Owens sent a handwritten letter to two of his neighbors, Stacy and Amy. Part note of gratitude, part personal update, and part warning. Here's what the note read.
Hi, neighbors. I hope this letter finds you all doing well. It's been almost a year since I've been home, but I haven't forgotten about my wonderful neighbors. Samantha has kept me well informed on how you guys have helped her so much during this tragedy. You have no idea how much that means to me. Just knowing Samantha and our two girls have your help and support has greatly reduced my worries for them.
Owens insists he didn't murder anyone, writing that he has the best attorneys he could ask for. Then his tone shifts.
As you all know, somebody burned down the double wide, and that somebody was my Uncle Gene. No doubt he burned it to send me a warning because I'm safe from him in here. I have lived in fear of him since January 2000 because of what I witnessed him doing. If you guys see him or anything odd around the place, please call the cops and Samantha.
It's the same accusation he would repeat years later in open court, that Gene Owens had pulled the trigger and killed Zebb. In July of 2017, more than 17 years after Zebb Quinn disappeared, Robert Jason Owens was formally charged with first-degree murder in his case. It was the moment Zebb's family had fought for. But court delays, COVID shutdowns, and changes in personnel would push the trial further and further away. By the time Owens was finally back in court in the year 2022, prosecutors faced a hard reality. It's been 22 years, there's still no body, and the physical evidence wasn't strong enough to guarantee a conviction. The DA called the plea to accessory after the fact, quote, a way to legally establish that Zebb Quinn was murdered and to give the family some measure of closure, end quote. Owens took the deal, 12 to 15 years, to run alongside his decades-long sentence for the Codd murders. It was not justice in full, but it was something. Back in March of 2015, after Owens' arrest in the Codd case, Zebb's mother, now Denise Vlahakis, had released a public statement. She reminded the community,
Jason's arrest has nothing to do with Zebb's case. We hope that if anyone has information concerning Zebb's whereabouts or disappearance, they will now come forward.
Those words were more than a plea. They were a reminder, even in the wake of another tragedy, her son's case could not be forgotten. In 2022, standing in court, Denise faced the man who had been tied to her son's last moments for more than 2 decades. She told Owens that while the plea deal left many questions unanswered, she hoped it would weigh on his conscience, and that maybe, one day, he would finally reveal where her son is. For the first time, the justice system finally recognized what Zebb's family had known all along. Zebb Quinn had been murdered. But the plea left haunting questions. Was Owens telling the truth about his Uncle Gene? If so, where's Zebb's body? And what really happened on that January night in 2000? For more than 2 decades, the answers have remained just out of reach. Fragments buried in lies, fear, and silence. Zebb Quinn was only 18 years old. He was a son, a brother, a friend. He was a young man with dreams ahead of him. And on a cold January night, someone took that away. Even with Owens' legal conviction, the truth is incomplete. The details of Zebb's final moments and the place where he rests are still unknown. For Zebb's family, that's gotta be the hardest part. They have no gravesite to visit, no formal place to say goodbye. But there is something they have, the certainty, now recognized in a court of law, that Zebb was murdered. And as tragic as that is, the hope that someone, somewhere, still holds the missing piece that answers their questions. Robert Jason Owens' story, the one he told investigators, and the one he repeated in court, is only one version of what might have happened to Zebb Quinn. And over the decades, others have surfaced. One of the earliest and most persistent theories was the love triangle involving Zebb, Misty Taylor, and Misty's boyfriend, Wesley Smith, who police records show had a history of domestic violence charges from prior relationships. Investigators told WLOS News 13 that they looked closely at whether jealousy could have played a role in Zebb's disappearance. Some in Zebb's circle believe Wesley may have confronted him. Owens knew both Zebb and Misty, and some theorized he may have been asked or pressured to lure Zebb out that night. From there, the versions split. One scenario suggests Wesley himself confronted Zebb, with Owens as backup. Another, closer to what Owens would later claim, is that a third party was brought in to, quote, handle the problem. What we do know is that Misty has never been charged in connection with the case, and in past interviews, she has denied knowing anything about where Zebb went that night. Another theory is less about a planned hit and more about a confrontation that could have spiraled out of control. Owens told police he and Zebb pulled over that night after Zebb got a page. Supposedly, Zebb rear-ended him, apologized, and then drove off. It's a version of events investigators said they do not believe, but still, let's tease it out. Let's assume the page came from Misty. We know Zebb was eager to hear back from her after their long New Year's Eve phone conversation. If he thought he was going to meet her and Wesley showed up instead, tensions could have escalated fast. A fight turns physical, Zebb is injured, or worse, and those present decide to cover it up. This version could explain why, 2 weeks later, Zebb's car was found abandoned in that parking lot with the puppy inside, the mysterious hotel key card, and the lips painted on the back window. Detectives have suggested some of those details may have been staged to mislead the investigation. There's also the possibility that the love triangle wasn't the central motive at all, that it was just a convenient cover for something else. Did Zebb know something he wasn't supposed to? Was he caught in the middle of a situation that had nothing to do with Misty or Wesley, but was dangerous enough that someone wanted him gone? Some in the community have wondered if the love triangle theory gained traction simply because it was easy to understand. Jealousy is a motive people recognize, but the truth is always more complicated. What we know for certain is this: Robert Jason Owens is legally tied to covering up Zebb Quinn's murder. Whether his version of events is the truth, whether his Uncle Gene pulled the trigger, or whether the real story is something entirely different, remains unanswered. And unless someone comes forward, those answers and Zebb's body will remain hidden. For more than 20 years, Zebb's family has carried a grief made heavier by uncertainty. I honestly cannot imagine losing a loved one and never really having definitive proof of what happened to them. This case captured our hearts. Zebb Quinn was such a kind young man. He was just starting his life. He deserved better. If you know anything about the disappearance and murder of Zebb Wayne Quinn, please contact the Asheville Police Department at 828-252-1110 or your local law enforcement office. To see photos and source content on this case, go to sequesteredpod.com. And if you want a deeper dive on the Zebb Quinn case, check out WLOS News 13's documentary and podcast, The Good Kid. We've linked it on our website. Please rate and review Sequestered wherever you listen. And remember, you can get ad-free and bonus episodes early as a subscriber on Apple Podcasts. I'm Sarah Reed. Thanks for listening.